What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best Hex Blast Witch build in Path of Exile 2. If you are looking for this build on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. So this is an endgame build that is structured around using the Hex Blast in the combination with other chaos skills that will curse and explode enemies in split seconds. Overall, Hex Blast has quite high mana cost, and to make it efficient we are going to be using the Mask of the Sanguimancier, which will give us blood magic and increase critical hit chance, so now we can convert mana cost into life. On top of this, when possible we can also use the Asterisk gloves to get instant leech from our critical hits. So then this combination would completely remove the mana from the equation and give us ability to infinitely spam the Hex Blast and do massive amounts of damage. The main gameplay idea behind our setup is to one-shot most enemies, and as they die, they will continuously replenish our life and energy shield. However, for the bosses we will need to be careful, as not getting stun locked is our main priority, and that's why we will use a specific setup such as putting Unbreakable Gem into our Hex Blast slot and much more. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Witch and our Ascendancy is Blood Mage. Then for the first skill we have the Hex Blast with support gems such as Inspiration, Considered Casting, Arcane Tempo, Unbreakable and Concentrated Effect. Then second we get the Dark Effigy with the Envenom, Comorbidity, Ancestral Urgency and the Withering Touch. Then next we got Blasphemy with Despair, Magnified Effect and the Ritualistic Curse. Next we have Blink with Ingenuity. Next up we have the Sigil of the Power with no support gems. Next we got Cast on Critical with Contagion, Essence Chain, the Chaotic Freeze, Energy Retention and the Impetus. Next we have Grim Feast with no support gems. Then next we have the Soul Offering with the Persistence, Minion Mastery and Ablation. And finally for the last one we are using the Skeletal Warrior with the Meat Shield, Last Gasp and the Elemental Army. Most of this setup is structured around using the Hex Blast to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Also, don't forget that we are using two weapons, so in the first weapon slot we are going with the Blasphemy and the Cast on Critical, while in the second one we have the Skeletal Warrior and the Blink. Next we also have a leveling build in case if you are starting your journey from level 0 and you want to use it up until about level 25. So first off we have the Spark with the Pierce and Arcane Tempo. Then second we have Flame Ball with the Fortress. Next we got the Frost Bomb with a Spell Cascade. And finally we're using Raging Spirits with Persistence. This is your basic setup up until you get our build's most important skills. In the early stages of progression we are using the Spark and Flame Wall as our main ability combo, as they are very powerful especially at the beginning. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node and then go like this while getting all of these 5. So there are Destruction, Practice Signs, Pure Energy, Dampening Shield and the Critical Overload. Then from here we now move to the right and get all of these 4. So Melding, Critical Exploit, Lingering Horror and the Royal. Then afterwards we circle back a little and then keep going until this point and then go to the left. And here we want to get all of these 3, so the Sudden Escalation, Void and the Heavy Buffer. And then from this point and onwards you can go here and up to the top and just unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, you just simply want to fulfill your attribute requirements for gear and skill gems, and then after that spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more intelligence. And then on top of this, a lot of our build is also improved by our specific levels that we use. So for the top 3 we have increased critical hit chance, then increased spell damage, and finally increased max energy shield. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sanguimancy. This one is just required to take for every Blood Mage, which will make all of our spells will now cost life as well as mana. Then second we get Vitality Siphon, which will give us Life Leech. This is currently the only way on how to get it, as this will give us a ton of extra recovery and make it very useful, especially against bosses. Then third we get Gore Spike. This will increase our critical damage for every 40 life, Ideally, we want to get as high critical bonus as possible. And then finally we get Southern the Flesh. This will allow us to remove some critical hit chance passives and allocate them to the other gem nodes to not go over 100%. And don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the path. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start, we wanna first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then from this point and onwards, you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this, we have even more passives, which order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter. So this time it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Withering Wand with a Chaos Bolt. And for bonus stats we want more extra lightning damage, increased spell and chaos damage, then also plus levels to all chaos spells, and increased critical hit chance and cast speed. On top of this, we also have the second weapon slot in which we are using the Chimming Staff for the Sigil of the Power. And for more we want more levels of all spell skills and increased critical hit chance. And don't forget about the specific abilities I told you to slot in for each weapon in my skill gem part of this video. And then also for the first weapon we got an offhand called the Advanced Antler Focus with Energy Shield. And for more we want even more max Energy Shield, increased spell and chaos damage, plus levels of all spell skills and increased critical hit chance and cast speed. Then for the helmet we have the Mask of the Sanguimancier. And during long boss fights we will run into a mana problem, and even just to scale our spamminess of the build we wanna use it, and this will give us blood magic which will convert our mana cost into life. So this is the only required item that you need for this build to work efficiently. Then for chest we have Expert Hexer's Robe with the Energy Shield, and for more we got even more max Energy Shield, max life, more to spirit, and fire, cold and chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the long belt with increased charm effect duration, and for more we want max life, increased flask life recovery and charm effect duration, as well as plus charm slots, and then finally we also want the fire and chaos resistance. Then for gloves we got the Acerus with armor. This is not required, however, if you want to scale your damage to the max and completely remove mana cost from our life, then we want to get these gloves as well. Then for boots we're using the Expert Feather Sandals with the Energy Shield, and for more we need increased movement speed, max energy and life, and also cold, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for the first ring we have the Amethyst Ring with the chaos resistance, and for bonus stats we got increased chaos damage, max life, increased cast speed, more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. While for the second one we have the Pearl Ring with increased cast speed, and for more we want increased chaos damage, max life, increased cast speed, more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. And then finally for amulet we have the Solar Amulet with more to spirit, and for extras we got max life and Energy Shield, then even more to spirit, then plus levels to all spell skills, then even increased critical hit chance and more percentage to all elemental resistances. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is just a starter setup, which would be more of an example of what stats and prefixes that you need to look for. Then next we have runes. During early item progression, most gear will be sacred with resistant runes. However, once your elemental resistances have been capped and resistant runes are no longer necessary, then you want to opt in to increase your maximum life with body runes or consider sacting a soul core. So right now on the weapon I'm using the Iron Rune, while for the rest of our equipment we are going with the Glacial Runes. Then on top of this, we need to quickly look into the charms. Charms are incredibly useful, as by having the right one equipped at the right time can save you from dying. If you are struggling with certain bosses, then look into what damage type they are using, and then use that specific charm to increase your resistance. For me personally, I like to use the Taving Charm for freezing. Then second, get the Stone Charm for stuns. And then finally, get the Ruby Charm for fire damage. But as I said, which one you choose will entirely depend on the enemies that you are fighting, so feel free to experiment and mix and match. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And this setup is pretty straightforward. So for mapping we simply want to spam the Hex Blast, which when we reduce our mana cost to pretty much zero and increase our cast speed, then we can even further maximize our DPS output. On top of this, because of the insane spam potential, so we won't have to worry about the enemies, as they will die very quickly. However, for stronger targets, watch out for stuns and getting stun locked, which is the only real danger that we want to avoid as much as possible. And then finally for the boss fights, this time we want to start by activating the Sigil of the Power. And then from this point just again spam the Hex Blast until the boss dies. And then just reactivate debuffs as soon as they expire. So let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, then you definitely don't want to miss my top 3 best builds video, where I showed even more powerful builds. So click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.